Today I will be reviewing V Castro's new vampire book, Immortal Pleasures. And you may know this already, but I have a very complicated relationship with V Castro's books. It's really a love-hate relationship. I don't always love them as much as other people do. But if one thing is certain is that I will always read her books because I think her stories are really important. I love seeing them out in the world. I am always going to support the representation she brings to the table, and especially to horror. So I'm going to tell you everything I liked about this new book, also the things that I didn't like, and you can make up your own mind whether you are interested in this book or not. This will be spoiler free, so don't worry about that. And let's get started because I have a lot to say. This is Michelle's Melancholia, where we read books to fear and shed a tear, and today we are reviewing Immortal Pleasures by V Castro. The first thing I'm going to say is that when I read a book for review, I usually stop at about 15% just to gather my first impressions and get a sense of what the book is about so I can share that with the people that are listening to the review. But this time around, I had to stop at 7% to take a few notes, because I knew this book was meant to be a little bit sexy, but it had me clutching my pearls. I do not read a lot of erotica or any at all, to be honest, so these kind of very sexually explicit scenes may be more familiar to other readers. And as I said, I am speaking out of inexperience, but I'm pretty sure the way these acts were being described is not the norm. The creativity there to compare acts and body parts to different animals and like different elements of nature was very creative. And while yes, I was definitely blushing through these scenes, I can't deny that I was very entertained. I appreciate the creativity. I'm sure this won't be for everyone, but as someone who was definitely not expecting these, I'm gonna say I have no complaints in that department. I do have an issue, however, maybe with the book starting out in this way. I'm not gonna read it for you because it's out there on the internet for you to look at it if you want to, but it's very clear from the synopsis that there is romance and sex involved in this book. It talks very explicitly about finding pleasure and love, but to be completely honest, I don't really think that those are the main points that this book is trying to make, and I don't think the relationships are even the main focus of the book. So in a way, I feel that the synopsis is maybe not really bringing out the best of the story, and I worry that this book may struggle to find its target audience. So hopefully this review will help you figure out if this is for you or not. So as I said, the synopsis pitches this book almost like a love triangle, where there is this female vampire and she's kind of like torn between a human man and another vampire, a male vampire. And to be completely honest, I actually think that the way the relationships were portrayed in the book were a little bit lackluster. I'll even go as far as to say that we could have removed one of those love interests from the book entirely and it would have been perfectly fine. And I actually thought about this point at all because I don't usually enjoy romance, and I was wondering if maybe I was being very biased. And after much reflection, I actually came to the conclusion that having these two love interests does create some kind of character arc for the protagonist, but I still believe that this could have been accomplished without one of these men. So because the synopsis doesn't really mention the other parts of the plot, which I actually thought were much better, I'm gonna tell you what I think this book is about. I'll just start by saying that this is such a clever concept, and I feel like V Castro is literally the only author I can think of that would even attempt to do this, and that's why I respect her so much. This book is more of a fantastical alternative history where she takes famous characters from Mexican history, specifically the conquest of the native Mexican people by the Spanish, and she reimagines them as vampires. The protagonist is Malinali, a woman who in her human life was known as La Malinche. I won't go into detail, but V Castro definitely does in the book give you some background. But she is a super interesting historical figure, definitely a very misunderstood, demonized woman, and that's why I'm so happy that V Castro chose to reimagine her in a way that she claims back her power. So as a vampire, Malinali has come up with a way to reclaim her history and kind of like bring some sense of justice to her people, and that is that she has become a trader of historical artifacts. So she basically goes around the world and she reclaims all these artifacts that are sitting in museums around the world that don't really mean much to that people. It's just a curiosity, but for the Mexican people they have incredible importance. So she's trying to take them back. And yes, she meets a human man and then she meets a vampire, whatever. But the real conflict of the story is that she's being stalked by another historical figure that's also a vampire that for some reason that we come to find out later is after her. When it's revealed what this other vampire does, why he's looking for Malinali, what does he do with his immortal life, honestly my jaw dropped, because it's just such a crazy idea. It sounds like it shouldn't work, but as I said, V Castro really makes it work. I don't want to spoil anything, but it takes like a really interesting sci-fi thrillery kind of vibe into the story. Now, if you've seen any of my previous reviews of V Castro's work, I don't really vibe with her writing style. I find it a little bit over-explained, verging on a little bit corny, but I really must say that writing style matches this type of story so well, just because of how over the top the plot is. The writing style like really brings that to life, and it has very dramatic dialogue, very dramatic imagery. So at some point it kind of felt that I was reading a vampire telenovela, and I'm not sure if she did this on purpose, but I thought that even if it's not, it's just such a cool nod to Latin American culture. I guess in the end, I would have loved it so much if more of the book was that aspect of the story and we didn't spend that much time with the almost unnecessary romance and erotica part. Although I must say that maybe it's not that I didn't want any of that, I just wanted a better balance, because I do think that some of those parts did have merit. For example, I know that the author always strives to bring a feminist twist to her stories. And actually this is something I struggle with as well, because some of the attitudes or actions that her female characters have, I don't feel like they always come across as feminist. But again, after much reflection, I came to the conclusion that in the end, not all women and not even all Latin American women have the same experiences. And I could see how for a specific type of woman, this kind of story would actually be very empowering, although it didn't necessarily read very empowering for me. So in the end, I ended up giving this book 3 stars, just because I don't think the balance between romance and action was where I like it. But actually it is my favorite V Castro that I've read so far, so that is good. Now, it's hard for me to say who I would recommend this to. Definitely if you are not into sexually explicit scenes, I don't think you'd enjoy this, or just start halfway because that definitely dies out and the second part of the story is definitely worth it in my opinion. I'm also kind of cautious to call it horror because nothing that happens is actually that horrifying or disgusting or unsettling. I think this type of vampires are more fantasy than horror, and as I said, sometimes it feels even a little bit sci-fi-ish. Also, if you like alternative history or you like your fiction to give you historical background on some event, I think you'll definitely enjoy this because it does move back and forth between timeline, so you get to experience different parts of history. I think that is all I have to say. If you have read this book or have any other questions, please leave me a comment, or if you just want to talk about any other V Castro's books, I'm always happy to talk about them. Other than that, I just want to thank Hear Voices and NetGalley for hooking me up with an arc of this book, and thank you to V Castro for writing these stories. I love to see Mexican women represented in books, especially in horror books or supernatural books. And as I said, I will read every single book that she puts out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.